First, let me introduce to you Dr. Richard C. Benson. Dick Benson comes to Dallas armed with engineering degrees from, are you ready for this, Princeton, University of Virginia, and a PhD from Cal Berkeley. He also, from there, embarked on a distinguished 36-year career in academia at the University of Rochester, Penn State, and most recently as the Dean of the Engineering School at Virginia Tech. I think as a sidelight here, interestingly, Dick, our first speaker in this series was Steve Love, who the president of the Dallas-Fort Worth Hospital Council, and he is a graduate of Virginia Tech. So we're getting our focus on Virginia Tech right now for sure. It's amazing to me, but it's now been almost 4 years since Dick Benson assumed the presidency at UTD, and there's been a remarkable time in its history during his tenure as the leader. Let me also introduce to you the Vice President and Chief of Staff at UTD, Rafael Martin. Rafael, for the past 17 years, has served in multiple roles at UTD, and he has degrees from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, as well as a master's degree from Duke and an MBA also from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So we're very fortunate to have these two stalwarts in the higher education space here to talk to us today. So let's go ahead and, before we get started, and I didn't forewarn Dr. Benson about this, but why don't you, Dr. Benson, give us your elevator pitch about who UTD is and what you mean to the higher education world.
Thanks, Ken. I'm delighted to do that, and thanks also for acknowledging Rafael Martin and Amanda Rocco, who are with me. So if the questions get too difficult, like any good administrator, I know when to duck and pass it off to one of them. So I'm juggling a few things, but thanks for letting me give you kind of the quick overview on UTD. You know, I've been bragging on UTD ever since I got here, and I've always been able to say that it isn't self-serving, because I'm really bragging on the people who came before me, and I think that's still true, although maybe a little bit has happened on my watch. But we're awfully proud of the growth of UTD. In fact, we are the nation's second fastest growing university, you know, that gives doctoral degrees, and that's really quite extraordinary. So in other words, students to ever increasing numbers are choosing to come to UTD, that they want to be here. Our research has grown considerably, and in fact, the federally funded research has grown close to 50% over the last 3 years. And again, this is really tough because these are federal dollars. These are the ones where everybody is competing, including, you know, the likes of MIT and Caltech and the like, and again, to an ever increasing extent, people want to send their research dollars to UTD. It was in 2016 that we became Carnegie R1, and if you're not familiar with that classification, that puts us in a group of about 120 universities that are considered to be of the highest research level. We have a tremendous student body. Our chancellor has been heard to say that the UT Dallas students are indistinguishable from the UT Austin students, and I think that's true by any measure. So things like SAT scores and the like, we really do well. One thing that we're quite proud of is we have 195 National Merit Scholars in this year's freshman class. And a year ago it was 172, and the year before that it was 156, and the year before that it was 116. And so, you know, that's an incredible ramp up of some of the most sought after students in the country. They're choosing to come to UT Dallas. And that number, by the way, places us well into the top 10 of universities that attract National Merit Scholars. So some awfully good things are happening right now. It also happens that this is our 50th year. So it was in 1969 that we became part of the UT system. The short history is that it was in 75 that we added undergraduate students. We were entirely a graduate program back then. And we didn't have freshmen until 1990. We didn't have residence halls until 2008. And some of our most popular majors are just about 10 years old, things like biomedical engineering and so on. So again, this is a university that is just rocketing forward. And that's part, in fact, the main reason why it attracted me here, and it's one of the things that keeps me excited. And just to look ahead a little bit, we're all taking our lumps right now because of this coronavirus, and UTD is going to take some hits in the coming months. However, at our core, we're very strong. We're very strong. I dare say most college presidents would trade places with me in a heartbeat to have our assets, our growth trajectory to be located in Dallas. It just means so much. So we're in a good spot. Again, I would have preferred that we not have to do this, with the coronavirus, because it's been kind of fun building the endeavor. But we're in a good spot, and we'll get through it, and we'll be fine. Once we get to the other end.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that setup, Dr. Benson. So let's harken back to August of last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was an exciting time on the UTD campus. It was the kickoff of your 50th anniversary year. And it was a really exciting, a lot of things happened during that fall semester. And the entire focus on the 50th anniversary was intended to go all the way through, I believe, commencement of this year. So on March 16th, the world changed for you. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit, and Rafael, please jump in here. I know you're expert at this as well, but tell us about your reaction, what happened on March 16th. Tell us about some of the actions that you've taken, and then from there, talk to us a little bit about the implications to the students, the faculty, and the community in general.
Sure. Let me just say a word or two, and then I'll pass it off to Rafael, who's in a really good spot to address this, because he, in fact, is leading our effort, and it's a whole university effort. We have been mindful of the coronavirus really going back to January, and in fact, we've had a number of statements that have shown up on our webpage. In fact, if you go to our webpage, the very top item there is information regarding the coronavirus. And so our first posting went up on January 31st, well before the March 16, 17 memo that we got from the chancellor, and it had to do with travel restrictions. And as things continue to develop and get worse, we had to make a number of decisions, including at some point, and I remember the meeting well, but we essentially the president's cabinet sat around a table and we all made the decision that we were going to do a couple things. One was to extend spring break by an extra week. And then when the students return, we would go entirely into an online format for the final 4 weeks of the semester. And by the way, this is essentially the end of the second week of spring break. So come Monday, we'll learn a lot more about our ability to do the online education. By the way, I feel very confident in our faculty and students. But we also in very early March, we started having a set of work groups, all reporting to Rafael, that were addressing things like research continuity, academic continuity, facilities and the like. And this would be a good time for me to just hand it over to Rafael and get a sense as to how we're approaching this.
Sure. Thank you, Dick. And thank you, Ken, for that kind introduction. I don't know that I've ever been referred to as a stalwart before, but I'll have to add that badge to my LinkedIn profile. So as Dr. Benson said, we began really when we came back from our winter break and started the spring semester. We, like most of you all, started hearing news about the novel coronavirus outbreak in China. It didn't really penetrate, I think, until later in January that we might have to start taking actions as an institution related to this outbreak. And as Dr. Benson said, the first communication kind of to the campus community took place on January 31st. And in those early days, as I'm sure most of your organizations, we were mostly concerned with kind of those members of our community that were abroad and what impact the outbreak might have on their ability to continue whatever activities, study abroad, professional activities they were engaged in abroad, whether travel to conferences might be available for international travel. but it quickly became apparent as February progressed that this was going to impact us much more intimately here. And that's when we started thinking about how we were going to respond as an institution. And as Dr. Benson mentioned, early in March, in the first week of March, I formed a coronavirus, a COVID-19 task force at the university that was composed of 8 working groups. 3 of them dealt with kind of the main operational areas of the institution. So as Dr. Benson mentioned, academic continuity was led by our provost, Dr. Inga Musselman, and was mainly concerned about how we were going to continue to deliver classes to our students. And as he also mentioned, we made a decision fairly early on in this process, and early on, I mean, like all of 2 weeks ago, we decided, we were going to go completely online. And there are some institutions that were still, and we talked about whether or not we could continue with some sort of hybrid approach, online classes, but still have in-person classes in some respects. But at the meeting that he mentioned, the consensus became that we really just needed to move completely online for the safety of our students, for the safety of our university community. And the academic continuity working group led by our provost has really been focused on how to make that happen. And they've done really yeoman's work in the course of 2 weeks to be prepared Monday morning to start delivering all of our classes in an online format. The next group that was formed was our research continuity working group. As Dr. Benson mentioned, we have a significant research enterprise here at UTD and a growing enterprise. But this outbreak has directly impacted our ability to kind of continue our research programs as they were operating normally. And over the last 2 weeks, we've really started to wind down all of our research activities to the bare minimum of what's required just to maintain equipment, the animals that are used in research, make sure that they're taken care of appropriately. But really, if you look at our research labs these days, there are very few people there just kind of maintaining the infrastructure necessary to ramp back up when we eventually do reopen. And that was not an insignificant undertaking either. It obviously caused a lot of our researchers to have to change plans and change gears very quickly. Thankfully, a lot of them can kind of switch to more research and or more data analysis and work on proposal development for future research funding. So there are activities that they can engage in more remote, as a more remote activity going forward, but it has been a change, obviously, for that enterprise. And the third operational working group that was formed was the administrative continuity working group, and that was really led by our Chief Human Resource Officer, Colleen Dutton. She was tasked with trying to figure out how we could make remote work for the entirety of campus, all of our faculty and staff to the maximum extent possible. And over the course of the last 2 weeks, we have really transferred all of our administrative activities to remote. Thankfully, we have the tools in place, and we had made a transition to some remote working tools in the course of the last year, 6 months to a year, that have really facilitated that. But I can't even imagine if this had happened even 5 years ago, how we would have managed the operation of the institution working remotely and away from each other on a daily basis. But from my perspective, the transition has been pretty smooth. We've been able to continue providing services to our students, to our faculty, pretty seamlessly. And so, great credit is due to that working group for helping the rest of us kind of make that happen. So those were the 3 operational working groups that were formed. The other main concern early on in this crisis was what to do with the approximately 7,000 students we have living on campus. With the decision to move to online classes, and with the Chancellor's memo of March 17th that you mentioned, Ken, we sent a clear message to our students that if they had suitable housing elsewhere, that is what we would prefer them to return to after spring break. We are committed to providing housing to those students that really call the university their home and really don't have alternative housing. But we're really trying to minimize the number of students that that are living on campus, just so that we can make sure that we can support them, keep them safe, provide the things that they need to survive kind of day to day. And we certainly couldn't, I think, do that if we still had 7,000 students living on campus. So my expectation is we will probably have 1,500 to 2,000 students living on campus. Most of them are in apartment style housing. So no real different than anybody else living in kind of a multifamily housing unit, and should be fairly safe and able to kind of isolate themselves in those circumstances. We hope to move most of our students out of our more dorm style housing before the end of this weekend and before classes move up, and we're on pace to do that. But our on-campus housing task force, led by our Vice President for Student Affairs, Gene Fitch, has really been key in that. The last 4 working groups I'll go over just very briefly. So as most of you might recall, kind of early on in this crisis, travel was part of our main concern, international travel especially. So we had an international travel working group and a domestic travel working group. Their work has kind of fallen off precipitously as we've basically put in suspension of any university-related travel for the foreseeable future. No international travel. Our policy right now is that there will be no international travel approved through the end of the calendar year, and domestic travel is suspended until further notice. I think that both of those policies are appropriate in the current circumstances. We're reevaluating that on an ongoing basis, but I expect that to be in place for the foreseeable future. Our 7th working group was campus readiness, just kind of making sure that our campus was appropriately taken care of for whatever might come. Calvin Jameson, our Vice President for Facilities and Economic Development, was in charge of that group. Early on, as I said, we were trying to prepare for maybe having some students still on campus, still trying to keep some services like our library open, maybe some lab facilities open. But as we quickly transitioned to understanding that this was, going to be safer for the campus community to really effectively shut down campus, he quickly and that group quickly pivoted to making sure that we had, we were closing down facilities appropriately. We were disinfecting facilities appropriately so that everything would be ready kind of when we were ready to resume normal campus operations. The last group I will mention has been really, and I will say they are last but not least, has been our communications working group. I think we understood very early on that communications to the campus community was going to be key to our ability to react nimbly to this crisis, to ensure that we were sending a consistent message that people were getting information. I think, early on, especially, people were looking for certainty in what was going to happen. And so things like making the decision to move to online classes and communicating that clearly to the student community, while some, didn't like that decision and were, upset that they weren't going to be able to finish out the semester in person on campus. I think at least they knew for certain what was going to happen over the course of the next 4 weeks. And so John Walls, our Vice President for Communication, has led that working group and has again done yeoman's work to make sure that the campus community has stayed informed about all of our updates, all of the changes that have happened over the last 2 to 3 weeks, and will continue to do so for as long as necessary until we kind of resume our normal operations. So sorry if that was a little long-winded, but that's kind of how we've dealt with things.
Great. Thanks, Rafael. Thank you for the going through the process that you went through. It sounds very deliberate and very comprehensive. So congrats on making that happen. So then tell us where we are relative to the spring calendar. As you've mentioned, I assume May commencement is off, all of the other events. What about the accreditation of online content, things like that. What's happening from that perspective?
Thanks, Ken. We're in an okay spot here. Again, we canceled, in-person classes. Any event on campus has been canceled, through the spring semester. And in fact, we've recently concluded that we're going to have to do our summer teaching also online. So we're looking at several months where we won't have any kind of function on campus. Graduation's an important thing. My colleagues know that I'm a big fan of commencement, and I want faculty to turn out to it. It's a special time, singular time in families, and it just breaks my heart that we can't have the normal commencement this May. So we're going to do two things. First of all, we're going to do something on the original dates. We'll prepare something by video where we can, celebrate the achievement of our graduating seniors and any other graduate for that matter. And indeed, they will get their degrees then. I mean, that will be the official, receipt of their degree. But then we want to have some occasion where they can put on the robe and walk across the stage and be recognized. And right now we're pointing to the first week of the fall semester. So we normally have some ceremonies in that first week. We have a convocation ceremony. So we're thinking we can take what would have been the May commencement ceremony, move it into September. There's some possibility that even that may not be possible. We're going to wait a couple months before we get to that. But right now, that is our plan. In terms of going online, we're in fine shape. And in fact, I was just discussing with both Rafael and Amanda this morning that even before this hit, fully 80% of our class had some online content. And it's important to remember that a course doesn't have to be all on or all off. So you could be using all sorts of forms of pedagogical technology to enhance the course, and a lot of our teachers do. So we already had a very sizable fraction of all of our courses that had some online content. And of course, now for the remaining 4 weeks, all of the courses will finish that way. There's no issue with accreditation. We've always been, for as long as I can figure, been accredited to provide online education. So nothing needs to change there. And we've had any number of messages out of SACS, that's our accrediting body, just letting us know that, they're not looking to penalize any university. They know that we're all in this together. So we'll be fine there. And as I said in my opening comments, there's actually even a little bit of a side benefit here in that we've had a quick ramp up in terms of the expertise of our instructors in using this technology. And I dare say that some of them who hadn't used it in the past will actually choose to have, some element in their courses going forward. So we think we're in a good spot here.
Great. Thank you, Dick.
Sure.
So as you read all the futurists that are coming out right now and many of the prognosticators, they're predicting that this crisis may be the tipping point in higher education when many more institutions will convert a majority of their classes to online. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, well, thank you again, Ken. In fact, I've been thinking hard about this for years. In fact, especially when, the massive open online courseware, or MOOCs, sort of burst upon the scene. And so I'd like to engage in a little bit of a thought experiment. And I'm going to speak in defense of, residential learning. Now, I'm an engineer. I'm an engineering educator. I'm a huge fan of pedagogical technology. In fact, you mentioned I was Dean of Engineering at Virginia Tech. And we took enormous pride at always being in the vanguard of using pedagogical technology. So online courses, flipped classrooms, things like that. We were always way out in front. But here's my thought experiment to you or anybody on the call. Think about your own education and think what would be left if we stripped away everything except the hours you spent in a classroom with a teacher in front of you, because that's what online learning is. I mean, you're there, you're receiving information from some wise individual that maybe it's already in the can, but nevertheless there's times when information is being provided to the student, and of course our classrooms are great at that, and computers are great at that sort of thing. But there's a couple things I would say. First of all, not everything can be pushed through a computer. I mean, think of some of the lab courses that you might take. where you truly need the hands-on experience, or you need the team working conditions. But also think, again, back to your own education and think about how much you grew as an individual when you were outside the classroom, when you were working with your fellow students. Maybe you were, slaving away on some tough term project together, or maybe you were just having fun. You were playing music or, doing something together. Think of that social environment. A university campus is this incredible environment for growth and development and learning. And that's still true. That is still true. So you can't just boil this down to the content of the classes. So yes, right now we are doing a lot, of our delivery. In fact, we have to do all of it right now online. But we absolutely want to get back to our residential format. And if I may say so, UT Dallas is just a lovely environment. It wasn't always pretty, but thanks to Margaret McDermott and others, we have just a glorious campus. It's just a wonderful place to be, and it's nurturing. It's just as they say, a great place to be young, well, even old, and learning. So we will get through this. As I say, we will be more adept at online education, but I would take strong issue with some of the individuals who say, well, every university will go this way. We won't have need for the campuses in the future. I just can't imagine that. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted it for myself, and I wouldn't have wanted it for my kids. So again, there are certain things you can do online, including entirely online, and that's fine too. Working professionals can benefit greatly by having some program that is compact and online. But in general, there's still going to be a huge need and a huge reason to have residential learning.
Great, thank you. So let me piggyback on a comment you just made about the campus environment. Under your leadership, Dick, UTD embarked on an aggressive building campaign and cosmetic campaign that's produced really a flourishing and attractive and active campus. How will this setback, this crisis, and potential for even more online learning, how do you think that will impact your future building plans and even how you utilize current space?
Thanks, Ken. There could be some change, but the fact is, the thing that's grown the fastest at UT Dallas is the student population. So in fact, our faculty size hasn't grown quite as rapidly. And despite the incredible growth of the physical infrastructure, that also hasn't quite kept up. So we still have considerable need to continue to grow the campus. We've done very well. Some major buildings have opened just in the short time that I've been here. A major engineering building opened a year ago. A major science building will open in a year to come. We're actually in the beginning stages of a wonderful building that's in partnership with UT Southwestern. Just as an aside, biomedical engineering is a terribly important area for us. And it's one area where UT Dallas and UT Southwestern are working extremely well together. So we have a new major facility that will go up, actually be on the UT Southwestern campus, but it'll be a shared building. And as you can tell by some of my comments, a large fraction of what we've erected, and I would say maybe on the order of half, is devoted to research. And so even if some of the pedagogy changes, if we're teaching in a somewhat different area, we still have the needs for those research labs. And as I say, our research has been growing incredibly fast. As I say, roughly a 50% increase over a 3-year period in federally funded research projects. So we have highly specialized equipment. And of course, we've attracted the sort of scholars who want to come to UTD to be part of these teams. They do research and they teach. They do both. So we want to continue on that pace. Of course, normally we look to 2 places for funding. We look to the state through tuition revenue bonds, or we look to the UT system through the Permanent University Fund, or PUF. And, as I think about the state, I have a feeling they're not going to have a great many leftover dollars in upcoming legislative session. So it may take us a while before we see a major infusion of funds from the state for new capital construction. Likewise, the system is going to help us get through this. So, there may be a little bit of a lull in what we can do, but we hope to continue. We hope to continue the pace of growing our campus.
That's great. Thank you. So you've referenced, both you and Rafael mentioned your research capabilities and how you are viewed in the research world right now. How do you expect that to be impacted from a planning perspective? And then Rafael, you might want to talk a little bit about some good news that Amanda shared with us about some of the contributions that your research or your labs have contributed to Parkland Hospital, et cetera, in the community and things like that. So either one.
Let Rafael field this one, in part because, first of all, he knows a lot, but he also was a long-serving AVP for research. So he's got pretty deep roots in the research endeavor here. So Rafael?
Sure, Ken. You kind of broke up a little bit. I got the part about the contributions of PPE, and I'm happy to comment on that. But I want to make sure I understood the first part of your question.
When you're planning for the future, I know it's very difficult in these uncharted territory, but when you're planning for the future, how are you looking at research and research dollars coming into the institution? Do you think it will be significantly impacted, or do you think that you'll still be on a solid footing?
I think we're still going to be on a very solid footing. If you look back to, the Great Recession in 2008, which is kind of, I think, the best analog that we can look to at this point, we saw a lot of the federal stimulus dollars actually go into federal research at institutions of higher education and medical research centers. And so I'm hoping that we'll see a similar pattern. And in fact, if you look at the research spending at most research universities over that period, you'll see a little bit of a blip, a little uptick in the research funding as money came from the federal government through stimulus packages, through the federal funding agencies, NIH, NSF, the DoD, targeted at the university researchers that they typically fund. So, if anything, I don't think we're going to see a downturn. My biggest concern is just when can we get our researchers back into the labs and working on their research programs. I think the funding will continue to be there. We have, as you noted, made a significant contribution of personal protective equipment to Parkland Hospital. Over 70,000 pairs of gloves, 1,000 or so face masks, and critically about several dozen of the N95 masks that are used for high risk situations. One of the advantages of having a research university in the community is that we use a lot of the same equipment, and we can kind of take our surplus and make it available to healthcare when needed. I wish we had more as we get more orders kind of through the pipeline. If we start receiving more equipment, we're going to pass those on to the healthcare community at this point because they certainly need it more than we do. Great,
thank you. So, Dick, you mentioned about the state. Your institution is largely dependent upon state funding. So how will this crisis impact your 2021 legislative agenda? And what do you think the ultimate impact is going to be, at least over the next 3 to 5 years?
Thanks, Ken. Another pretty insightful question. If you'd asked me this in January, what I would have told you, I've already sort of touched on it. But we're trying to continue the physical growth of the campus. So we were hoping we could get the state to engage in helping us with a number of major infrastructure projects that we hope to have. We're trying to build on our bioengineering and sciences endeavor. We're trying to create, in essence, a student success center because, as I've noted, the student body has grown faster than anything here, and we just need to keep up, including just very routine things like more classrooms. Who knows? I rather doubt we're going to see that, because the state, of course, will be looking to help make a lot of people whole after this. And we know full well that there's a lot of industry that's really taking a hit right now, as are the state universities. So right now, I'm hoping we can get some relief. As I say, we have a strong university. We will still be strong when we get to the other end. But we're going to have some hurdles to get over. For example, we have a pretty sizable student fraction of our student body from foreign countries, notably China and India. And it's not beyond reason that we might have 0 new Chinese students next fall. And I always hasten to add, the thing I miss most about them is their intellectual capability, and the thing I miss second most is that they pay for their education, that they pay tuition. So there's a pretty good likelihood that we're going to take a hit on tuition revenue. By the way, I might point out that the state part of our funding is 17%. It's an important part, but far and away tuition is the far greater piece. And of course, all the other things we do in attracting research dollars and the like. So I imagine that the state will want to help. Again, there'll be a lot of people to take care of. It remains to be seen how much help we may get. Just this morning, we were talking about some assistance that we will get from UT System. We are refunding fractions of things like, parking, residence halls, and the like, food service for those students who won't be using those services. And UT System is going to help us cover some of that loss. But it's going to be interesting. And, again, I hope we can get the state to give us, in essence, some bridge money just to get us through, because we will get back to a strong position. And so if they can just help us get through the coming year, that would be a very significant benefit to us. So we won't be looking for some of those growth areas right now. They'll have to go on a back burner. But if we can get some of these bridge funds, we really would be grateful.
Very insightful. I thought I knew a lot about UTD, and I had no idea that it was only 17% of your budget that came from state funding. So yeah, that's amazing. I did not know that.
Well, it's true at a great many state universities. In fact, I dare say all of them. We don't have enough time to get into it, but basically when times get hard, cuts get made to state universities. And then when times get good, the money doesn't come all the way back. Yeah. And so in every university, at least every state university I've been in, starting with Penn State, people speak of the X curve, which is sort of a downward sloping line of the fraction that comes from the state, and the upward sloping line that comes from tuition. And a great many universities can speak of their crossover point. I think it was somewhere around the year 2002, where we crossed over, where we had more money coming from tuition than from the state. And it's just, the X just continues to widen, I'm afraid. Yeah. But this is true everywhere, every state you go to.
Yeah, thank you for that. So interestingly, just as an aside, we plan to have President Mark Rudin from Texas A&M Commerce participate in one of these briefings later in the month of April or early May. And we'll get his perspective on the Texas A&M system relative to the University of Texas system. So we have Cece Gassner on the phone. I thought it was very interesting also to point out that from Texas A&M Commerce, but it's also interesting to point out that Cece and Jeff Kittner are both calling in from Paris, which I think that's spectacular. So.
Are they there willingly, or were they stranded there?
No, these are background photos that they just happen to put behind them. So,
I see.
Yeah, exactly. We have a couple of questions. Amy, I think I saw your hand go up. Amy, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my applause for the support of the PPE.
Oh, I apologize.
No.
Well, Amy, while you have the floor, why don't you tell everybody about your association with the University of Texas at Dallas, since it's relatively new.
Sure. So I'm part of that great expansion of campus with the Crow Museum, the arrival of the Barrett collection, and other collections we anticipate. that will be part of an arts and performance complex on the southeast side of campus, opening in hopefully 2024. And this pause, in some ways, gives us time to really think and work closely with the architects on designing a complex that is magnetic to students, that will really support the strategy to increase and engage the arts on campus and shift the culture to more bountiful student life. So that's the work that we're doing right now, remotely, as the Crow Museum is, of course, closed right now.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very
yes,
much.
thank you.
Mary Beth Goodrich, did you want to make your comment, or did you want me to make it for you?
I can just say, as a faculty member at UTD, I have been very encouraged by the communications that we've gotten. I've taught online for about 15 years now, and I'm helping to head up a team of faculty mentors to allow our faculty to get online, and we're having sessions every day this week just to kind of encourage each other and learn from each other. And what I've really found is that people are exploring and doing things. And for professors, a lot of times it's hard not to have perfection in what you're doing. And so we're just encouraging each other along that way. And I think that we're going to emerge as better on the flip side once that happens. And I'm excited because I feel like we have the support from the upper levels of the university to do what we need to do to make this successful. So I am happy to hear from you, President Benson, and also Rafael. This has been very good for me to kind of hear from your perspective. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
Can I say a word here? So, Mary Beth, thank you so much. You know, one thing I'd like for everyone on the call to know is that I've been really pleased by just the whole can-do attitude of our faculty and staff, as well as our students. Obviously, this is a huge interruption in our lives, and it would be easy to get discouraged, but yet I've seen people just knuckle down and really get to work trying to do the right thing. And again, I think of all of those faculty members who, you know, weren't trained already or didn't have the expertise in online learning. And what we've seen is a lot of their colleagues have come to their aid to help them ramp up. We have good programs in place in general, but again, there's been a lot of sort of peer-to-peer mentoring that has gone on. And again, we really just had a 2-week window to get ready to do this. We had a wonderful experience just on Wednesday. You know, our academic senate or faculty senate met on Wednesday. And the Speaker of the Senate, you know, with about a week to spare, said, you know, this should be a trial run. We'll do that Senate meeting entirely online, much as we are right now. And by God, we made it work. And I know that those individuals took real pride that they made it work. And so, you know, we had that meeting. It was pretty robust. In some ways, it was even better than most meetings, and that a lot of people attended, and we got a lot of ground covered. So that was good. So I've been really pleased. You know, come Monday, we'll really get a feel for how things are going. I'm very optimistic. You know, we may have a hiccup or two on Monday when we launch into the final 4 weeks, but again, just from what I've seen from the faculty and the staff over the last 2 weeks, I'm just highly encouraged. And also, let me just say thanks to Amy for her comments. In fact, I meant to say something in my opening comments, but you know, one of the things that we've done at UT Dallas is we've really been trying hard to grow as a university, especially in the arts. And so the acquisition of, you know, the Barrett collection of Swiss art and the Crow collection of Asian art has just been tremendous for this university, and it's going to be a big part of the future of the university. And if I may say so, another good reason why people will want to come back to campus and not just visit us online.
Thank you. We have a question from our District 12 Dallas City Council member, Kara Mendelson. I don't know, Kara, are you on that you can ask the question, or do you want me to ask it for you?
No, Kara's not on. She sent me the question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff. So Kara asked this, the question, is UTD offering any adult learning online classes during this physical distancing period? As an FYI, she said she's looking for refreshers, self-studies on finance, on municipal bonds.
Well, let's see. I don't know that we've offered something new that wasn't already being offered. So again, we have a lot of non-matriculated students at any one time who may be taking a particular course at UTD. So they continue. The summer session is actually very popular for that sort of thing. Now that work will be entirely online, but you know, I will take this under advisement. I think this is a great suggestion. So it may be that this is one of the areas where we can give a little bit more back. Rafael explained a little while ago about, you know, the contribution we made to Parkland Hospital using some equipment that, you know, we could afford to do without. But I can see where there would be special needs for people to maybe get a crash course or a mini course in some areas. So I like the suggestion quite a lot. So again, we have a pretty good array out there now. You know, someone wouldn't be starting, you know, midway through the semester, which is the case now, but I'm sure we could point into the summer and even beyond to have more of these, you know, special areas of training that would help people in the community. It's a great suggestion.
Ken, I can look in. I know for our faculty and our staff through our library, we have a institution-wide license for what used to be called lynda.com, now LinkedIn Learning, which offers a tremendous variety of online courses on a variety of different topics. And in fact, a lot of our staff members, as they are kind of working remotely, are utilizing that resource for professional development. I can talk to our folks in the library to see whether or not we might be able to open that license up to the community, and if LinkedIn Learning would be willing to kind of allow us to do that and update you on that.
Great. Thank you, Rafael. Appreciate that. And I don't know, Amanda, you may want to get back directly to Kara on that question and with feedback from Rafael.
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you. All right, let's open up the floor to any questions that we might have from the audience. By the way, Dick, I noticed that at one point, I think we were close to 90 participants when we were expecting 50 to 60. So that shows you the amount of interest there is in the community about what's happening in the higher education space and particularly at UTD. So thank you again. Any questions from anyone that's online right now? Because I still have several other questions, but I don't want to dominate the time. All you have to do is raise your hand or your virtual hand, or just unmute. Let's see. Oh, Andy. Andy Freundlich, are you on? Let's see. I'm just looking at a couple of questions that are coming up in the chat function.
And I'll ask one.
Okay, please.
Dr. Benson and Rafael, can y'all talk about the 50th anniversary and how this has all impacted that and what else may be in store relative to the anniversary?
Sure. Well, you know, this is our 50th anniversary. You know, we've had a lot of fun this year. Maybe you've seen some of the billboards in the airports and the highways. You all remember airports, don't you? In fact, we have sort of a tagline, which I rather like, the speed of bright. And it's been kind of fun celebrating for an entire year. Of course, it was to culminate in a big gala coming up, I think in about a month's time. Unfortunately, that has to be postponed. So we will not have that big gala. Actually, the Richardson Symphony was going to play, and in fact, my wife was going to make a surprise appearance in the string bass section. So there's a whole lot of things that we were really pointing toward, you know, just to finish this year in a spectacular way. So it all got cut short on us. But you know, we will have that party. We will do it. It'll be, I think right now we're pointing to October right now. So maybe we'll have a combined 50th, 51st birthday celebration, but we intend to do all the things that we plan to do, through this semester. So keep watching. We'll get there.
We can relate. Tuesday of this week, we were scheduled to have our 66th annual meeting, which we were expecting an audience of about 600 at the Hilton Anatole, and that was going to feature a great presentation or a conversation between Grant Moise of the Dallas Morning News and Ken Hirsch, President and CEO of the Bush Presidential Center. Unfortunately, we've had to postpone that, as everyone else has. It's currently scheduled for June 10th, but even that's at risk, obviously. So I think the fall calendar, Dick, is going to get very crowded.
I agree.
Right. All right. I'm going to go ahead and, unless there are any other questions, let me just pose one final question to you, Dick.
Okay.
And let's ask, you all have been incredible leaders in the community in general. How can we, as the community itself, how can we help UTD continue to make the kind of difference that it does on a regular basis in Dallas and beyond?
Well, again, thank you. I'm reminded of why UTD exists in the first place. Our founders were, the leaders of Texas Instruments. So if you go back to the mid '60s, and they felt that there was a need of some institution to turn out the sorts of people that they wanted to hire, because they were struggling to bring high-tech talent, into that company. And of course, TI was high-tech then, and they're high-tech today. And so they had this rather brilliant concept to create the Graduate Research Center of the Southwest, which was the predecessor to UT Dallas. But I tell you that story for a couple of reasons. First of all, I like to point out it's not uncommon for a great university to spin out products and services and things that could even turn into an industry itself. The reverse almost never happens, where industry spins out a university, but that's what happened. And so even today, in our strategic plan, one of our key elements is to be an economic engine for the region. And we take that very, very seriously. So it's been at the heart of what we do from day one. And we've always worked well with our corporate friends. Again, it's in our blood. It's just something that we've always done. So as I look forward, we want to make sure that we can still continue to do that. So I think anything you could do, as the North Texas Chamber of Commerce, is help us continue those links. We want to stay connected, and maybe in a more immediate fashion, tell all your friends what a good education can be found at UT Dallas. As I say, application numbers continue to rise at a good clip, but and we're really proud of what we do. We're very proud of the sorts of individuals that we turn out. One of our other factoids is about 80% of our students are going to be in the STEM disciplines or management. And again, these are areas that are very much in demand, in the Metroplex, which is exactly why we were created. So we want to be able to continue in that. We would love to be able to continue the growth, but we have always been strongly linked to the community. And so I think anything you can do to help us, maintain those ties and even grow those ties would be greatly welcomed by us. So that's what I would most look for.
Great. Thank you very much. Oh, Caroline, you have a question.
I do. Hello, everyone. President Benson, you sent a really heartfelt message, an email to the student body, praising them for their resilience. How do you feel the student body is coping right now?
That's a great question. I think they're doing well. It's tough because we are, I want to use the right word, physically distanced, and so I can't do one of the real pleasures of the job, which is just walk down the mall and bump into people, and talk to them. You can pick up a little bit through social media, and we're trying to track it. My sense is that we have a very fine student body in the sense that they're very resilient. There are stresses. And it can vary. So, you know, if you're a graduate student from China, you know, your life may be playing out differently than if you're, you know, an undergraduate, you know, from McKinney. And my sense is that our students are doing okay, but I'm pretty sympathetic. This has been a real stress. And I'm especially, you know, I'm really thinking of the students about to graduate, because, you know, you want to finish with a bang. You want to really thoroughly enjoy those last few weeks with dear friends. And, you know, that's all been, you know, taken away. So, you know, that's a loss. That's a real loss, not to be in close contact with your friends. We heard, I forget if it was Amanda or Rafael, but, you know, someone talking about, you know, happy hours done virtually. One of our departments is doing coffee. I guess they've always done a coffee break, but this time they all get their coffee and they sit in front of their computer screens and drink coffee and chat. But I think we need to do as much as we can to maintain community among the students. And so I think we're doing it. I'm really glad that classes are continuing. And in fact, the next thing I do once I get off this video is I'm going to work with our communications team to have some sort of welcome back event for our students. Again, it's a virtual welcoming, but I'm concerned, as I ought to be. But again, what I've sensed is that our students are quite strong, quite resilient, and we're going to do okay. And I thank you for citing that letter. You know, one thing I was trying to help people understand is that this will pass, and that in about a year's time or less, or, you know, whenever, once again, we will walk down the mall. We will be with our friends. We'll have a cup of coffee, you know, on campus. We'll take in, you know, some music. And I just wanted to paint that picture for people to understand that we are getting there. We will get back to that environment that they really enjoy.
Thank you very much. We simply can't thank Dick Benson and Rafael Martin for your engagement today and your thoughts and insights. It's very, very helpful. We really appreciate it. Just want you to know that we'll be making a donation in your name to the North Texas Food Bank in recognition of your contributions today. We really appreciate both you, Dick, and Rafael, for being here. I also want to thank Amanda. Amanda Rockow is the one that put this all together for us. We thank her, as she always has just been an incredible supporter of the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce. I also want to thank our sponsors again, DART, Southwest Airlines, and Haynes and Boone. I want you to check out our website. All of you who attended today, check out our website. Just a few of the programs that are coming up in the next week are on Monday. We'll be hearing from DISD trustees Edwin Flores and Dustin Marshall. On April 1st, that's just 2 days later, on April 1st, we'll be hosting Congressman Colin Allred, and he'll be talking about the federal stimulus package that was just passed in the House while we were talking. On April 3rd, I had previously mentioned Kara Mendelson, District 12 council member. She will be speaking to our Public Safety Committee that day. And then last but not least, on April 6th, the following week, we'll be hearing from a panel of experts at UT Southwestern on mental health, resilience, anxiety, and grit in the age of COVID. So please keep an eye on our calendar. It's very dynamic. We expect to do at least 2 of these virtual briefings per week over at least the next month. So thanks again for everyone's support, engagement. As Dick mentioned in his closing comments, you know, these challenges that we're facing right now, they will pass. But these kinds of relationships and opportunities to get together, they'll endure. And so please stay healthy and stay physically distanced. And we'll look forward to seeing you on one of these future briefings.